Oke, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
We are praying to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala that today we are in good health and we are also going to listen the student presentation related to their topic in the subject of Indonesian history in the time of colonialism and imperialism in Indonesia. Starting our lecture today, we are reciting together Basmalah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Well, today we are going to listen the student presentation. They are Arfah I. Fajar, Ahmad I. Tauhid, Ahmad Ahimsa, and Gulam Ihsandi, and lastly, Rama M. Sudaryana. Each student can present the PowerPointers only in 5 minutes maximum, okay? So I would like to give chance to firstly Arfah I. Fajar. Arfah, your time is 5 minutes, starting from now, please. Okay, your voice still unmute.
Oke. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Arfah Ibrahim Fajar. Saya akan mempresentasikan tentang penaklukan Banda oleh POC pada periode 1609 sampai 1621. Nah, semula di awal tahun 1605, Belanda sebenarnya setelah datang berangsur-angsur pada 1602. Namun pada 1605, Laksamana Stephen van der Hagen tiba di Maluku untuk mengusir orang-orang Portugis dan Inggris secara berangsur-angsur. Nah, kemudian tahun selanjutnya, ketika tahun April 1609, Laksamana Peter Willem Bierhoff kemudian datang ke Banda dengan membawa 15 kapal yang mengangkut 1.000 pelaut dan 1.000 prajurit. Nah, tujuan dari Laksamana Verhoef ini datang untuk melaksanakan kegiatan monopoli dengan para pejabat lokal di Lontor. Nah, pada saat itu, karena tidak ada pemimpin di Banda, maka ada istilah yang disebut dengan gelar orang kaya, orang-orang yang memegang kegiatan perdagangan di Banda. Nah, karena dilaksanakannya monopoli ini, orang Banda menganggap bahwa ini merupakan ramalan yang menyebutkan bahwa akan ada pasukan asing yang berambut pirang, berkulit terang, berbaju perang lengkap yang akan mencoba menaklukkan Kepulauan Banda. Sehingga tidak lama kemudian orang-orang Banda ini memberontak dan melakukan penyergapan sehingga Laksamana Verhoef terbunuh bersama 33 orang rekannya. Hal ini membuat Simon Jans Hons, Laksamana saat itu, melakukan memberi hukuman kepada orang-orang Banda dan berhasil memblokade perairan pesisir Banda dan melakukan aktivitas kegiatan perdagangan di sana. Lalu pada 13 Agustus 1609 pada akhirnya dilaksanakanlah kontrak jual beli atau monopoli pala dan puli antara orang Banda dengan POC. Namun pada kinerjanya, pada pelaksanaannya, hal ini pun dilanggar oleh orang Banda karena orang Banda melakukan perdagangan dengan Inggris. Nah, setelah diketahui Inggris dan Belanda melakukan sebuah traktat kerjasama, pada akhirnya J.P. Chun pada saat itu mengetahui bahwa J.P. Chun pada saat itu mengetahui bahwa Belanda hanya mendapat sepertiga perdagangan rempah, sedangkan 2/3 rempah-rempah. Maka pada 1 Januari 1621, J.P. Chun pun meminta Inggris untuk mengumpulkan sepertiga armada untuk invasi ke Banda, namun ditolak. Sehingga pada 27 Februari 1621, J.P. Chun pun datang ke Banda tanpa orang Inggris dan tiba di Benteng Nassau membawa 13 kapal armada dan 36 kapal kecil. Nah, kemudian tiba di Lontor, Kemudian tanpa pikir panjang, Jipicun membumi hanguskan Lontor dengan korban 883 penduduk. Nah, pada 8 Mei 1621 sekitar 44 orang para pejabat atau orang kaya ini dieksekusi. Nah, POC kemudian pada saat itu menciptakan perkainer atau seperti perkebunan yang mendatangkan orang-orang Batavia dan Ambon sebagai Freiburger atau pekerja kasar. Nah, kemudian Kepulauan Banda dibagi menjadi 68 perkebunan dengan setiap satu perkebunan terdiri dari 34 perkener. Nah, setelah itu masalah monopoli buah pala dan puli ini diselesaikan oleh POC dengan cara perang, melindungi perken atau kebun dari ancaman asing sekaligus memastikan bahwa seluruh sistem produksi dan pertumbuhan bunga berjalan sesuai rencana. Sejak saat itu, Banda sepenuhnya dikuasai oleh atau didominasi oleh VOC di bawah Jipicun. Sekian dari saya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, thank you very much, Arafah Fajar. Your presentation is only 4 minutes. Okay, the next presenter is Ahmad Tauhid. Ahmad Tauhid, your time also similar, 5 minutes, please, starting from now.
Baik, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Di sini saya akan mempresentasikan tentang Pangeran Cornel ya sebagai simbol perlawanan rakyat Sumedang terhadap kolonialisme. Di sini kita jelaskan dulu bahwa Pangeran Cornel itu merupakan Bupati Sumedang pada tahun 1791 hingga 1828. Lalu ia merupakan putra dari pasangan Suryanagara III dan dari ibu dari Nyimas Nagakasi, yang dimana ayahnya itu dahulu juga merupakan Bupati Sumedang pada masa periode 1761 hingga 1765. Nah, Pangeran Cornel ini dikenal di masyarakat dengan nama Asep Jamu, gitu. Dan juga setelah diangkatnya menjadi Bupati Sumedang mempunyai nama lain yaitu Pangeran Kusumadinata ke-9. Lalu di sini kita pembahasan topik utamanya yaitu perlawanan simbolik terhadap kolonialisme ya. Yaitu peristiwa Cadas Pangeran yang merupakan sebuah tindakan perlawanan atau protes dari Bupati Sumedang ketika itu, yaitu Pangeran Kusumadinata ke-9. Lalu di sini juga Pangeran Cornel dengan ciri khasnya itu yaitu berjabat tangan dengan waktu itu tuh Denles dengan memakai tangan kiri gitu. Sedangkan Pangeran Cornel memakai tangan kiri dan sehingga membuat Denles pun terkejut karena kekesalan tersebut melihat rakyat Sumedang ditindas gitu atas apa yang telah terjadi waktu itu atau kerja rodi lah. Lalu seperti apa yang diceritakan juga oleh para sesepuh Sumedang gitu, bahwa Pangeran Cornel ini tidak hanya melakukan protes semata gitu, tetapi Pangeran Cornel pun menantang Gubernur Denles waktu itu bertarung 1 lawan 1 dan mengatakan bahwa dirinya itu selaku Adipati Sumedang lebih berjuang dan berkorban sendiri daripada harus mengorbankan seluruh rakyat Sumedang. Nah, mendengar hal itu pun Denles merencanakan hal lain gitu, yaitu dengan berkata kepada Pangeran Cornel bahwa eh, ya tentara berjanji pada Pangeran Kornel bahwa tentara Belanda lah yang akan mengambil alih sepenuhnya pekerjaan pembuatan jalan, sedangkan rakyat Sumedang dipersiapkan hanya untuk cadangan saja. Gitu. Tetapi hanya muslihat saja, hanya bermuslihat. Beberapa hari kemudian pun Denles atau yang dijuluki Mas Galak ini membawa ribuan pasukan Belanda gitu dengan tujuan menumpas perlawanan dari Pangeran Kornel lah dengan rakyat Sumedang. Lalu Pangeran Kornel pun dengan segenap pembesar Sumedang melawan dengan gigih lah dengan semangat juang yang tinggi gitu tentang penindasan tersebut. Tetapi apa daya karena kekuatan Belanda ketika itu sangat besar gitu dan juga tangguh, alhasil Pangeran Kornel pun berhasil dikalahkan gitu. Lalu Pangeran Kornel pun dan ratusan rakyat Sumedang sebagiannya gugur gitu oleh pasukan Belanda. Nah, lalu ini ada di bawah ini merupakan bukti bukti sejarah lah, sebuah prasasti yang terdapat di Cadas Pangeran yang berisikan tentang berbahasa Belanda ya. Ini ada terjemahannya di sebelah kanan, yang dimana di bawah pimpinan Raden Demang, Mangkupraja, dan di bawah penelitian Pangeran Kusumadinata dibuat pada tahun 1811, dibobok dari tanggal 26 November sampai 12 Maret 1812. Mungkin cukup sekian dari presentasi dari saya. Kurang lebihnya mohon maaf. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, thank you very much. Ahmad Tauhid, your presentation also 4 minutes. Okay, the next presenter is Ahmad Ahimsa. Ahmad, your presentation is similar, 5 minutes, please.
Sudah terlihat?
Okay, go ahead.
Oke, baik, terima kasih saya ucapkan kepada Pak Wirta selaku dosen mata kuliah SIMKA. Izinkan saya di sini untuk sedikit menjelaskan mengenai kondisi perempuan Indonesia pada abad 19. Kondisi objektif yang dialami perempuan Indonesia pada abad 19 tidak jauh dilatar belakangi dengan datangnya bangsa Belanda ke Kepulauan Nusantara pada akhir abad ke-16 dengan tujuan yaitu perdagangan ya, atau bisa kita sebut 3G gitu, pada glory, gospel dan glory, gospel dan gold. Untuk melancarkan aksi mereka, Belanda mendirikan sebuah kongsi perdagangan yang bernama VOC pada tahun 1619. VOC yaitu persaudaraan dagang yang bertujuan untuk menjalankan politik monopoli perdagangan rempah-rempah di Indonesia, akan tetapi tujuan utama mengkonsentrasi perdagangan rempah-rempah itu lambat laun bergeser menjadi penindasan, khususnya di perempuan gitu. Yang saya soroti penindasan yang dialami perempuan Indonesia pada abad 19 ini, yakni pertama pergundikan. Nah, penaklukan Batavia oleh sebuah kekuatan dagang Belanda atau VOC mengawali kisah kelam nasib perempuan di Indonesia. Alih-alih untuk mengatasi kesunyiannya, mereka mencari jalan pintas yang dianggap lebih murah dan aman, yakni dengan mengambil perempuan Asia untuk dijadikan gundik. Nah, gundik sendiri adalah budak perempuan yang tinggal di rumah Eropa atau di rumah bangsa kolonial. Fungsi gundik sendiri yakni all-in sih. Selain mengurusi rumah tangga, para perempuan ini atau gundik ini juga mengurusi kebutuhan nafsu ranjang para tuannya. Mereka ini memang bukan pelacur ya, yang dibayar atau memungut jasa. Namun mereka juga bukan istri yang sebenarnya, karena tak pernah menikah secara resmi. Kalau menurut Ibnu Wahyudi, ya, pengajar Fakultas Ilmu Budaya Universitas Indonesia, dalam bukunya yang berjudul Kata Pengantar Kesastraan Melayu, Tionghoa, dan 5 Kebangsaan Indonesia pada jilid ke-7, disebutkan bahwa fenomena pergundikan semacam ini banyak terjadi di negara Asia dan Afrika dalam masa kolonial Eropa. Fenomena ini tidak hanya dilakukan oleh koloni Belanda saja, tetapi juga terjadi atau dilakukan oleh koloni Inggris, Portugis, dan Perancis. Hal ini dikarenakan kekuatan tentara penjajah yang datang saat itu tanpa disertai kaum perempuan, sehingga mereka mencari istri pengganti di wilayah yang ditaklukkannya. Kemudian saya juga menyoroti selain gundik itu yakni fenomena Nyai. Nah, fenomena Nyai ini juga tidak beda jauh ya sama pergundikan di Indonesia pada abad 19. Nah, fenomena Nyai sendiri ini dimulai pada awal pemerintahan kolonial Belanda pada tahun 1815, yaitu ketika jumlah perempuan Eropa sangat sedikit jumlahnya dibandingkan jumlah prianya. Untuk itulah hadir para nyai. Apa sih itu perbedaan nyai sama gundik? Kalau nyai sendiri itu wanita simpanan para saudagar kaya Belanda. Sedangkan gundik sendiri yang tadi saya sebutkan itu bisa babu gitu ya, babu oleh tentara-tentara dan masyarakat yang disebut kelas menengah Belanda juga. Kalau nyai sendiri itu wanita simpanannya. Nyai ini perempuan dipelihara oleh pejabat kolonial Belanda atau swasta Belanda yang kaya. Kebanyakan perempuan yang menjadi nyai ini berasal dari petani. Pokoknya perempuan-perempuan kelas bawah. Ada juga nyai yang berasal dari keluarga piai juga yang diserahkan ayahnya kepada orang Belanda atau orang Eropa untuk mengamankan kedudukan dan jabatan sang ayah. Biasanya nyai yang dikirim oleh ayahnya itu ini kalau bisa saya disebut sebagai pengkhianat. Kebanyakan orang pada masa itu menyebutnya sebagai pengkhianat. Nah, ketika seorang perempuan menjadi nyai, maka kehidupan ekonominya juga otomatis lebih baik. Dia dapat hidup lebih nyaman, disegani. Terus mereka juga menjalani hidup seperti yang dirasakan oleh saudagar Belanda, karena mereka itu wanita simpanan. Mungkin demikian yang bisa saya sampaikan. Mohon maaf apabila ada kesalahan. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, thank you very much, Ahmad Alwinsyah. The next presenter is M. Gulam Ihsandi. Gulam, bismillah. Your time is 5 minutes, please.
Baik, Pak. Share screen. Ya. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Di sini saya akan mempresentasikan mengenai gerakan perlawanan sosial petani di tanah Partikilir Ciamas Bogor pada masa kolonial Belanda tahun 1886. Ya, istilah tanah Partikilir telah muncul sejak awal masa VOC, yaitu pada abad ke-17 sampai perempatan pertama abad ke-19. Sebagai akibat dari adanya praktik penjualan tanah yang dilakukan oleh orang-orang Belanda. Tanah-tanah Partikelir adalah tanah milik swasta yang muncul akibat praktik-praktik penjualan oleh company dan dilanjutkan pada masa pemerintah Daendels dan Raffles. Hingga sekitar tahun 1820, setelah sistem tanam paksa berakhir, dibuatlah sistem yang mengatur mengenai tanah Partikelir. Sistem tersebut dibuat dalam Undang-Undang Agraria pada tahun 1870 yang menjadi undang-undang pertama yang mengatur tanah Partikelir. Nah, di dalam undang-undang tersebut dinyatakan bahwa semua tanah yang tidak dimiliki oleh seseorang adalah tanah negara. Jika ada orang yang mengaku memiliki tanah tersebut, dia harus membuktikannya dengan surat bukti hak atas tanah. Dan juga disebutkan bahwa tuan tanah memiliki hak penuh atau otonom untuk mengatur daerahnya sendiri. Rakyat yang menghuni tanah partikelir itu harus tunduk kepada pengatur yang dibuat oleh pemilik atau yang istilahnya tuan tanah partikelir. Faktor yang menjadi penyebab terjadinya peristiwa Ciamas tahun 1886 adalah karena ketidakadilan yang dirasakan oleh para petani seperti besarnya pajak cukai yang dikenakan dan juga terutama dalam mengeksploitasi sumber daya yang seringkali disertai dengan tindakan kekerasan. Melaporkan dan membuktikan tindakan tersebut tidaklah mudah karena tindakan tersebut telah dikamuflase dengan memanipulasi peraturan dan kontrak kerja yang sah. Hal inilah yang membuat tuan tanah beserta para administrasinya tidak dinyatakan bersalah. Banyak bukti yang menunjukkan bahwa tuan tanah sering menentukan pajak hasil bumi berdasarkan ketentuan yang tidak jelas dan sering menyita harta benda orang yang dinilai berhutang. Bukti-bukti itu yang menjadi faktor utama terjadinya perlawanan para petani. Nah, terjadinya perlawanan ini dipimpin bukan oleh tokoh agamawan, priai, atau sederajatnya, tetapi perlawanan ini dipimpin oleh orang yang berada di kelompok yang sama, yaitu para petani. Perlawanan ini terjadi sebanyak 2 kali. Pertama pada bulan Februari 1886 terjadi perlawanan dilakukan oleh Apan Basa Amah dengan dibunuhnya Haji Abdul Hakim yang merupakan seorang camat Ciomas. Perlawanan ini timbul secara spontan karena pembunuhan awal ditargetkan kepada orang yang berbeda. Nah, perlawanan kedua terjadi di luar dugaan dengan adanya persiapan yang matang pada bulan Mei 1886 yang dipimpin oleh Muhammad Idris. Nah, selanjutnya kurang lebih sekitar 2.000 orang penduduk dari tanah partikelir Ciomas berkumpul di Pasir Gaok untuk mendukung perlawanan Muhammad Idris. Jumlah ini sangat banyak mengingat jumlah penduduk Ciomas yang hanya bersekitar 15.000 orang. Target dari penyerangan ini ialah keluarga tuan tanah yang akan menghadiri acara pesta sedekah bumi disebutnya, yang selalu diselenggarakan setiap tahunnya. Tetapi pada saat sedekah bumi sedang berlangsung, keluarga tuan tanah tidak hadir dalam acara tersebut. Penyerangan Muhammad Idris segera diketahui oleh asisten residen Conan. Lalu Muhammad Idris dan pasukannya segera diburu oleh aparat polisi yang akhirnya mereka tewas ditembaki oleh puluhan serdadu. Nah, peristiwa ini membuat banyak pertentangan terjadi di dalam pemerintah Hindia Belanda dengan pemerintah Belanda sehingga permasalahan ini menjadi bahan pembicaraan di parlemen Belanda. Masalah tersebut akhirnya ditutup begitu saja setelah Otto van Res mengundurkan diri dari jabatannya sebagai Jenderal Gubernur. Kejadian ini disebabkan oleh menurut beberapa orang, kejadian ini meningkat atas fanatisme Islam dan adanya hasutan dari pihak lain yang tidak menyukai tuan tanah. Tetapi hal tersebut tidak terbukti adanya ketidakadilan, pemerasan, serta penyelewenganlah yang menjadi latar belakang dari peristiwa perlawanan ini. Para petani memiliki nasib yang sama dan rasa dendam terhadap tuan tanahlah yang menjadi acuan dalam melakukan perlawanan. Munculnya dugaan fanatisme Islam itu dikarenakan para pemimpin dan pengikut dari perlawanan ini mayoritas beragama Islam, tetapi hal itu bukan menjadi dasar yang menyebabkan pecahnya perlawanan di tanah partikelir Ciomas ini. Nah, sekian dari saya. Mungkin wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, thank you very much, Bulan, Sandy. The last presenter is Rama and Sudariana. Rama, Bismillah, your time is 5 minutes. Please.
Baik, Bapak, sebentar. Apakah sudah ada PPT-nya? Baik, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih kepada Bapak Andi Suwirta yang telah mempersilahkan saya untuk mempresentasikan materi yang saya angkat. Perkenalkan, nama saya Rama Nur Fitras Dariana dengan NIM 2107723. Di sini saya membahas tentang pemberontakan petani Banten pada tahun 1888. Yang dimana yang terjadi di distrik Cilegon. Pemberontakan ini terjadi terhadap pihak kolonial Belanda, yaitu waktunya memang tidak cukup lama, dari tanggal 9 Juli sampai 30 Juli 1988. Pemicu dan pendukungnya yaitu masuknya perekonomian barat yang menggantikan perekonomian tradisional yang membuat masyarakat banyak tidak setuju dan banyak kesusahan gitu. Lalu selanjutnya ada pemberlakuan pajak tanah yang berlebih. Lalu diberlakukannya sistem tanam paksa. Yang terakhir ada masalah kepemilikan tanah. Lalu ada faktor pendukung juga selain faktor pemicu dari terjadinya pemberontakan petani Banten pada tahun 1888. Yaitu faktor pendukungnya agama sebagai spirit gerakan sosial, yang dimana agama ini ataupun kiai-kiai atau ulama-ulama ini membantu, mendorong ataupun mensupport gitu terjadinya pemberontakan petani Banten gitu. Terus ada pemimpinnya dari kaum elit agama dan bangsawan. Jadi pemberontakan petani Banten ini tidak hanya dari kaum petani saja, memang mayoritasnya dari kaum petani, tetapi ada juga kaum elit bangsawan atau kaum elit agama yang menjadi pemimpin-pemimpin pemberontakan yang terjadi di Banten. Terus dibangunnya pesantren-pesantren dan munculnya gerakan tarekat, yang dimana pesantren ini bukan hanya untuk wadah transfer ilmu, tetapi untuk penumbuhan rasa nasionalisme dan patriotisme, dan munculnya gerakan tarekat sendiri sebagai semangat untuk bersatu melawan pihak kolonial. Terus ada juga jalannya pemberontakan, yang dimana pada Senin 9 Juli 1888 pukul 2 dini hari 100 pemberontak bergerak ke tempat Haji Ishak yang di daerah Seneja, menyerang ke rumah Henry Francois Dumas, yang dimana dia itu adalah juru tulis dari asisten residen kolonial di daerah itu. Lalu Dumas itu sendiri berhasil melarikan diri dan bersembunyi di rumah seorang Tionghoa. Tetapi di saat Haji Tubagus Ismail mencari ke rumah gitu dan menemukan Dumas sedang bersembunyi di rumah Tionghoa yang bernama Tan Hen Kok. Lalu Dumas sendiri menjadi korban pertamanya. Lalu selain itu sedangkan Haji Usman menyerang Ulrich Beckett, yang dimana Ulrich Beckett itu sebagai kepala penjual garam. Jadi si 100 orang ini dibagi ke 3 pasukan penyerang, yang dimana pasukan pertama dipimpin oleh Lurah Jasim, pasukan kedua dipimpin oleh Haji Abdul Ghani, pasukan ketiga dipimpin oleh Haji Tubagus Ismail. Kenapa dibagi ke 3 kelompok? Karena sasarannya itu ada 3, yaitu ada penjara untuk membebaskan para tahanan-tahanan, lalu ada kepatihan dan rumah asisten residen di alun-alun Cilegon. Nah, pemberontak yang dipimpin oleh Lurah Jasim bergerak menuju rumah jaksa dan Ajun Kolektor, walaupun mendapat sedikit perlawanan dari anaknya Ajun Kolektor yang bernama Karti Diningrat. Sebagian pemberontak yang dipimpin oleh Lurah Jasim bergerak menuju penjara dan membebaskan sekitar 20 tahanan. Nah, singkat cerita, Cilegon sendiri sudah dikuasai oleh pemberontak atau pejuang gitu. Lalu Haji Wasid bersama kelompok pemberontak menuju Serang. Kenapa? Karena ingin menduduki kepatihan gitu. Tetapi Bupati dan Kontrolir Serang bersama Letnan Van Serstar membawa satu pasukan bersama 28 senjata api baru gitu untuk ke Cilegon. Tetapi lalu terjadi pertempuran di Toyomerto, yang dimana pasukan dari pihak kolonial berhasil memukul mundur pihak pemberontak karena senjata-senjata yang dipakai oleh pihak kolonial berbeda dan baru gitu, membuat pasukan dari pemberontak terpukul mundur. Lalu Haji Wasid yang kalah di pertempuran Toyomerto melakukan long march ke Banten Selatan, tetapi pelarian mereka diakhiri oleh tentara di daerah Sumur. Lalu saya
Okay,
akan
Rama,
membahas
your time was over. Please close your share screen. Itu enough.
Baik, Bapak, terima kasih.
Okay. Before I making the brief comment to the student presenter, please also another student who didn't presentation today to make also the brief comment and sending to the WhatsApp group. Okay. So not waiting until me finish making the brief comment. And your brief comment to the WhatsApp group, please your comment, your suggestion, maybe you also criticize to one of the student presenter. So not to all students, but just one of the 5 student presenter. Okay. Okay, I would like to make the brief comment and also maybe criticizing and suggesting and recommendation related to the student presentation. Firstly, please ensure that you are a student of history, right? So I think should be deep understanding about your topic, because based on your presentation, I think your knowledge, insight about the history is not yet deep understanding. Okay, so I think as student of history, you should be understanding deeply about your topic, and also can explaining about and analyzing about what really happened about the what is historical fact. Okay, and I would like to make the brief comment in 3 methods. Firstly, about the title, about the topic, and then about the explanation or discussion or analysis, and lastly about the reference. Reference is very important, because if you didn't read about the standard resources or standard reference, I think your analysis, your explanation may be not deeply enough. Okay, because of that, I think please read and use about the standard reference related to the bibliography or the historical sources. Okay. Firstly, to Arfah Ibrahim Fajar. Okay. Penaklukan Banda oleh VOC 1609-1621. I think your title is okay. There's the period or time aspect, but should be clear about the subtitle. Okay, maybe you can use or adding about the subtitle in order the title should be clear. What really happened? What will you do? What will you analyze about this event? Okay, so I think subtitle is very important in order your title is not only interesting but also should be clear. What do you want to analyze, to explain this historical event? Okay, and because of that, it is also should be clear about your explanation. Firstly, Banda. Banda is part not yet clear. In Maluku Island, particularly in the North Maluku, there are 2 prominent kingdoms, Ternate and Tidore. Okay, you didn't explain Banda is part of Ternate or Tidore kingdom, because you can understand about why Banda invaded or that is dominated by the VOC cannot be separated from the what we call the agreement, the commercial agreement, the trade agreement between the VOC and Ternate or Tidore kingdom. Okay, so should be clear, because Banda in Maluku Island, and in Maluku Island there are the many kingdoms, whether the Ternate, Tidore, Jailolo, so on. Yeah. And you mentioned also about the contract, okay, contract or agreement. What you said about the pala and puli? What the pili? What the kind of puli? Puli is like pala or cengkeh or merica, or please you should explain about what kind of puli, okay? Because I think it is strange in our knowledge. You know about the cengkeh, pala, lada, merica, but puli is what the puli. And this contract, this agreement is between the VOC and the official and local official. Okay. And this contract, it is like the agreement. If someone deny about the agreement or disagree with agreement, it will be consequent. Not only the Banda people, including also the Ternate, Tidore kingdom, will be punished by POC. It is normally. If you make agreement with me, blah, 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 and you deny the agreement, I will suppress you. I will punish you. I think the context of Banda, why invited by the VOC, as you also mentioned that orang kaya deny or not didn't agree with the contract. Okay, melanggar kontrak. Because of it is normally if the VOC official angry and also invited, suppress or punish the orang kaya and his follower. His follower is maybe the people of Banda. Okay, so should be explained about. So please, you not the making the historical judgment that POC is jahat, POC is kejam. It is about the contract. Contract is agreement between two parts, in which VOC and orang kaya in Banda, VOC and Ternate, VOC and Tidore should be agree in the contract. If one of the part disagree, it will make the problem, including also maybe punish from the VOC to the Ternate Tidore kingdom and others. Of course, in the contract it is about the monopoly, economic monopoly. But if but the king of Ternate, the king of Tidore, the orang kaya Banda agree with this contract because benefit in the early period. But when this contract and then denied by the orang kaya, of course the POC was angry and conquest the Banda. So your explanation should be like that, not in the white and black perspective that the VOC was making harassment, was making what is infighting to Banda. No, I think cause and effect should be explaining. Okay, should be explained. Okay, unfortunately, you also didn't mention about who is the orang kaya, who is the figure. Maybe that the name is so not only the king of Ternate in Tidore, Sultan Nuku, Sultan Ba'abullah, who is orang kaya in Banda, should be mentioned. Okay, this figure. In order we know all the orang kaya in Banda who lead the resistance against the POC is Andi Suwirta, for example, or Latu Harahari, or whoever. Okay. And then how the kind of resistance? I think should be ensured that the action from the native people, including also in Banda or Banda people, Maluku Island people against the VOC, I think it is the confrontation between the modern power and traditional power. As we know that VOC not only have the more money, much money, lot of money, but also VOC had the military, okay, had the security, had the army that consisted of not only from the European people, but also consisted of the native. Maybe soldier from Madura, from Jawa, from Sunda also, from Manado, as the what we call as the tentara bayaran, you know, as the paid army, paid security. Okay, so because of that, in confronting between the local leaders, local people against the VOC, VOC will to be winner, because it is the modern, not only in the what is organization structure, but also in the mean. Okay, so I think it is very important in order we understand why finally Banda invited by the VOC. Okay, so and then Banda finally divided, became 68 perken. Perken is perkebunan, plantation or landon. Please should be explaining also why should be divided to be 68 perken, 68 plantation, 68 landon. I think it should be explained, although we understand why Banda is important for the VOC in one hand, and why Banda also finally invited or conquered by the VOC. And should be also mentioned about who the prominent figure in Banda as the orang kaya who resistant against the VOC. Okay, in order maybe we can know about who as the local hero in Banda. Not only the orang kaya is more. Me also orang kaya, but who is orang kaya? Okay, Latu Harhari, Patimura, others. I think please mention who is orang kaya in Banda Island, in which he or she or they against the resistance against the VOC. Okay. Maybe it is related to your reference because your reference is not clear. Okay, please ensure that you will using the sources in 10 bibliography consisted of book or article in the journal. Of course, you should be read about the history of VOC. Okay, history of VOC, and including also history of Maluku Island. It is critical to know, particularly the history of kingdom Ternate and Tidore, Jailolo, including maybe Banda. Okay. So Banda, what is part of the Ternate or Tidore, it is very important to know. Including also if you want to know about how the policy, how the action, how the what did do by the Governor General of VOC, you should be read about the biography of Jan Veter Sun Kun, for example, or whoever the leaders of VOC in fighting the Banda Island. Okay, and you should also read about the Isin I. It is the book standard in the time of New Order government. I don't know, or maybe volume 3 or 4. Okay. And then the IDAS, Indonesia dalam Arus Sejarah, Indonesia in the Historical Mainstream, maybe also in volume 5 or 6. Please you find out. And should be read Reclap modern Indonesian history, is general history, to understand about Indonesian history since the Islamic period to the Reform era. Okay. And one of the expert of historian related to the VOC is the Boxer. If you searching in the Google, okay, Boxer about the history of VOC should be read. Article, books from Robert C. Boxer, I think. Okay, and there's also the scholars from Maluku Island, Ahmad Taufik Akmal, or I forgot, but Akmal read about the Banda Island, about the Ternate in Tidore Kingdom in Maluku Island, including also the PhD thesis from Professor Dr. Rikan Zaki Leriksa, okay, the professor from Department of History, the UI, University of Indonesia in Jakarta. His decision about the Jailolo Kingdom. I think it is very important to be understood, to understanding about the history of Maluku Island, Ternate Tidore Kingdom, including also Banda Island. Okay, so it should be clear about your analysis, and it should be chronologically and critically also in order your explanation, your what is explaining about the how POC invaded the Banda Island is clear. Okay, next Akmal Imam Tauhid, Pangeran Cornel. I think you cannot differentiation between the history and literature, okay? Between fact and fiction. I think you should be ensured that when you analyzing, explaining, describing about the Pangeran Cornel, it is should be based on the historical facts, not based on the literature. Harus berdasarkan fakta sejarah, bukan fakta sastra. Okay. Let's see. Firstly, about your title. Okay, title is okay, but please also added with the subtitle in order it is clear for you. Okay. For example, Pangeran Cornel. You said it is the symbolic. What is symbolically resistant? It is good because when Pangeran Cornel want to shake hand with the left hand, I think it is symbolically protested. Okay, so I think subtitle is very important in order. What will you analyze about the Pangeran Cornel? Okay. Okay, and then about the discussion or analysis, I think it should be analysis about background of this figure. Not only he is the son of regent, but also how about the education of Pangeran Cornel. And character, I think character is very important. Maybe he want to shake hand in left hand, it is habitually. Mungkin dia orang kede, kebiasaan aja itu. No. Habitually. If you see about the badminton player, there's the left and hand. So please analyze also about the education background, including also character habitually of Pangeran Cornel. In order you understand why Pangeran Cornel, when meet with Daedalus, he want to shake hand in with the left hand, not right hand. Okay. So didn't interpreted by the literature. Maybe the sastrawan rather than Mehmet Sastra Prawira itu protes Pangeran Cornel. Maybe if you read about based on the historical fact, it is the habitually. He's habitually. Kebiasaan dia. Okay. And okay. Yeah. How also the interpretation and reaction of Daedalus? Maybe for Daedalus also, Pangeran Cornel using the left hand, it is habitually, and Daedalus didn't understand what the meaning of using left hand for someone. I think you should also the biography of Daedalus, not based on the literature that left hand is the protest. Maybe for Daedalus it is normally, habitually. Okay, so should be read about the biography of Daedalus. Okay, you mentioned also Bupati melawan Daedalus. Daedalus is Governor General. Okay, and he is the Mas Galak. I think noting that the Bupati, the regent, again and resistant to the Daedalus. and then die, meninggal. you are not. Let's see. Daendels in Indonesia from 1808 to 1811, right? Meanwhile, in your title, Pangeran Cornel was passed away 1828. So your story that this region, Pangeran Cornel was died in the time of Daendels, it is not logically. So there's no rebellion, no no protest physically from the region, from the Pangeran Cornel and his follower against the Daendels. So I think your your knowledge about the Pangeran Cornel based on the literature, not based on the historical facts. Okay, Bupati gugur, Bupati Pasway. I think if you talk about as student of history and you talk about this story to the other audience, I think you you will loved by audience. Okay, that Pangeran Cornel didn't pass away against the Daendels. He passed away normally in 1828, not in 1811, in which Daendels finally stepped down from his power, including also the inscription. Okay, I think this inscription not meaning that Raden, what is Raden Demang, who purposed that he resisted to the Daendels. No, this is the meaning, the inscription in Dutch language, that this inscription made in by Raden Demang and endorsement or diketahui, diteliti by Pangeran Cornel as the regent. So it is not meaning that Raden Demang and Pangeran Cornel against the Daendels. No, this inscription just to inform to others that this inscription made in what is the year and is made in by Raden Demang, and then what is mengetahui or disetujui endorsement by the Pangeran Cornel. Okay, so it is not meaning that Raden Demang and Pangeran Cornel revolt or against or resisted against the Daendels. I think Daendels is Mas Galak, not Bupati, including also King of Banten, abolished by Daendels. If what is try to resistance to the Daendels. Okay, so I think there are no story that region of Pangeran Cornel and Raden Demang against the Daendels. No. Okay. Maybe it is also related to your reference. Okay, reference should be at least 10 sources consisted of book or article in the journal. Please you read biography Pangeran Cornel, but based on historical analysis, not literature analysis. So please, okay, you read Mehmet Sasta Hadi Prawira and so on, okay? But it is Raden Mehmet is literature, not historical study, okay? So it should be different between literature and history. Literature is fiction. History is real, okay? So please also find out the biography of Pangeran Cornel, including also biography Daendels. And maybe if you find out also biography of the Mangku Praja, who made the inscription, the prasasti, okay? And of course, you should read about the Isin I, Sejarah Nasional Indonesia, Indonesian National History as the standard book. and also the IDAS, Indonesia dalam Arus Sejarah, Indonesia in the History of Kemanusiaan. Reclaim also should be read. It is the kind of protest, the kind of resistance in culture matter. You should read about the James Scott. James Scott, perlawanan kaum petani. How the protest of the peasant is not only physically, but also culturally. Including also maybe shake hand with the left hand is the protest culturally. So there's kind of protest culturally, according to James Scott. Because of that, you should read this book. It's very interesting. Okay, comparing between the peasant in Asia, Africa, Latin America against the colonialism and imperialism. Of course, related to the history of Sundanese area, Sundanese region, you should read about the Nina Herlina Lubis. Okay, history of West Java, the history of Sumedang, and so on and so forth. In order to understand what really happened about the Pangeran Cornel in regarding with the Danelaw, related to the Danelaw. In order you understand, please, in analyzing historical facts should be based on the logically and rationally, not based on the literature perspective. Okay. It's very important. The next, Ahmad Ahimsa, kondisi perempuan Indonesia pada abad 19. Okay, the time is available, but please, it should be making the subtitle, the woman condition. You want to explain about the woman condition, but in analyzing, you analysis about the pergundikan. I think it is not figure out about the woman condition, because the woman condition in the 19th century is not only pergundikan, but also maybe they as the woman, such as Sucnatdin as the hero in the struggle, such as Kartini concern in education. So please should be clear in the subtitle. What do you want to analyze about the woman condition, woman Indonesian, Indonesian woman condition in the 19th century? Okay, including, so maybe the pergundikan phenomenon is the case by case, not general phenomenon. Okay, you also similar with the Pangeran Cornel. Maybe based on the literature, not based on the historical fact. Maybe you read about the Pramudia Anandatur, okay? Nyai Ontosoro, Nyai Dasima, because literature perspective is different with history, what is analysis, okay? Should be clear about the historical fact, not based on the story of literature, okay? And why it should be based on the historical fact? Because official of Dutch, not only in the time of VOC, including also in the time of Dutch colonial government, the official of that is generally they ask the Protestant, and then in Protestant ethics, in Christian religion, about the marriage, you know, until now, they or he should be just have one wife, no more. So I think the phenomenon of prostitute, it is not what is general phenomenon. If we talk about the official or civil servant in the time of POC and the Dutch colonial government, because of that, one of the critical policy of the not only VOC but also the Dutch colonial government is applied to discrimination discrimination in based on the color skin. So there are rarely that the Dutchman married with the native woman because it is the Protestant ethic. Oke, jadi jarang orang Kristen itu termasuk pejabat Belanda, POT yang nyandung, apalagi kawin dengan wanita pribumi yang beda warna kulit. It is really not general phenomenon. Should be understand about this historical reality. Okay, not based on the literature. Maybe of course, if you read about the Pramudia Anandatur and other literature work, there's the Nyai Dasima, Nyai Ontosoro, and so on and so forth, become the Gundik Orsolir, the Dutch or POC official, maybe they have to the case by case. But generally, the POC official, the Dutch colonial government official, just have one wife and should be married also with the Dutch woman, not with the native woman, okay, or pribumi woman. So please should be based on the historical fact, not the literature story. Okay, maybe it is also related to the reference. So please you searching the relevant reference from the books and article in the journal. Should be mentioned who is the Gundik or Nyai in here. Okay? Should be clear. I think the Nyai Dasima Ontosoro, maybe it is the fictive figure. So who the Gundik here, the figure, the real name in which you study. Okay. And maybe you find out about her biography. It is good if you are finding out her biography. Of course, if you didn't find out about the figure name of this woman, you should be read also the Isin I, and then Idas, Hendrik Klep. Okay, you using also the Pramudia Anandatur books in tetralogy in Buru Island works, Bumi Manusia, Anak Segala Bangsa, Rumah Tata, and so on and so forth. But this should be criticized because Pramudia Anandatur is based on the literature perspective, not the historical fact. Okay. How we can understand that this literature not based on historical fact? There are no sources. There are no reference. So if we read about the literature book from Pramudia, from whoever, there's no reference. Just based on his mind. Okay, his thinking, his imagination. Okay, so please make sure that your title, particularly in analyzing the Indonesian woman condition in 19th century, is very clear related to the phenomenon of concubine, okay, pergundikan. And next, the Muhammad Gulam Ihsandi, gerakan perlawanan sosial petani di tanah partikulir Ciamas Bogor pada masa kolonial Belanda. Okay, it is okay. There's also the time aspect in this title, but in analyzing and discussion about your topic, please also should be understand about the structure of government or the history of the VOC and also the Dutch colonial government in Indonesia. Okay, so the Dutch colonial government manage and what is making the administrative in Indonesia not like in the currently situation. So the policy of the VOC and also the Dutch colonial government in managing the Indonesian archipelago is indirect rule. What the meaning is indirect rule? So the VOC and the Dutch colonial government just have the structure from the Governor General, Resident, Assistant, and Controller. Meanwhile, from the Bupati, Demang, Pati, Camat, Lurah, all is native people, native official. Okay, so because of that, the Dutch and VOC administration not directly managing the Indonesian archipelago. It is the one hand. In other hand, particularly in the 19th century, in which there's what we call as the liberal economy period, that should be a differentiation between the plantation state and private plantation. Perkebunan negara, perkebunan swasta. So state plantation is owned by the Dutch colonial government, but the private plantation, tanah partikular, it is the private, the swasta. So who should be responsible about the private plantation? Not the Dutch colonial government, but the conglomerate, the businessmen, and generally not only the Dutchmen, but also the British men, the Italian men, the European people. You know about the Pamanukan and Ciasem London in my region in Subang? There's no owner. They didn't own it by the Dutch, but by the British. So maybe the tanah particular in Siomas Bogor, because it is the private plantation, not owned by the Dutch, maybe by the British or by the Chinese as the rich man, as the conglomerate. Okay, so should be understand about the status or condition of the private plantation, different with the state plantation. If the state plantation owned by the Dutch, of course, the Governor General and so on should be responsible about this plantation. But if private plantation, there's the private, non-government. What is important for the government is what is money by lending from the private businessmen. Okay, because of that, in your explanation that this person and the leaders of Ciomas against the Dutch colonial government, I think it is not logically. Because of that, maybe a resistance to the what is local official, pejabat lokal, pejabat pribumi. Okay, as you mentioned also, what is resistant to the camat, okay, resistant to the maybe assistant of the controller and so on, and generally is the local people or native people. Okay, so including also social resistance. I think social resistance here should be interpreted not only physically, but also maybe culturally. And okay, peasant. As you know, if peasant, they ask the wet rice, okay. But for the plantation, I think maybe there's not peasant, bukan petani, maybe labor of the plantation, okay, buruh perkebunan. Because if the peasant, is for the paddy rice, wet rice untuk persawahan. But for plantation, I think maybe not peasant, that's the labor of plantation. And labor of plantation conducted the contract because of that, the coolie contract. Contract is agreement between the private plantation and the labor. Should be agree with this agreement, with the contract. If the coolie, for example, or the labor obey or didn't agree with the contract, I think it is normally if the labor or the peasant or the ordinary people are suppressed by the private plantation official. Okay, so should be explaining something like that. Okay, and you should also analysis who is Apan Mbak Saamah. Should be analysis who this figure. Okay. In order is clear who this figure, including also Muhammad Idris, who is he? Should be clear. Okay, so we can understand why, for example, the figure like Apan Mbak Saamah, Muhammad Idris finally resisted or against the private plantation official, whether the mandor, the assistant resident, the controller, the camat, the demang, and so on and so forth. Okay, and this is should be analysis why the Governor General Otto van Ries should be stepped down, should be retired for his position, because it is the private plantation, not related to the Governor General. If the state plantation, kalau perkebunan negara, okay, it is related to the Governor General. If the private plantation, tanah partikular, it is not directly related to the Governor General. So should be analysis and find out why the Governor General Otto van Ries should be retired or step down from his position. I think not because the Ciomas resistant, Ciomas people resistant. Maybe another factor should be find out. Okay, this is also related to your reference. I think the Sartono Kartodijo books, not only the report of Banten Peasant, but also Sartono Kartodijo had written many books. The Ratu Adil, the pemberontakan petani Banten, the perlawanan petani, and others should be read in order you understand what the pattern of resistance from the labor, from the peasant, from the ordinary people in responding the modern colonialism and imperialism in Jawa. Okay, so please also read the SNI, IDAS, and reflect. And I think the lecturer of the Department of History of UI, University of Indonesia in Depok, in Jakarta, Muhammad Iskandar, research about this Ciomas case. Maybe should be read also his research report. Okay, and the historian who expert about the history of labor in the plantation, Jan Breman. Okay, Jan Breman should be read about the coolie contract, about the perburuhan, about the sejarah perkebunan, history of plantation, not only in Jawa but also in Sumatera particularly. I think it is Jan Breman book that should be read in order your explanation related to the Ciomas people resistance against the Dutch colonial government is clear. Okay? And lastly, I think Rama Nur Fitra Sudaryana, pemberontakan petani Banten. Okay, I think should be added with the subtitle in order, for example, what your different your people with the PhD dissertation from Sartono Kartodinjo, Pemberontakan Petani Banten 188. What is different between your people and the Sartono Kartodinjo book? Because of that should be added with the subtitle. What do you want to analyze from this Pemberontakan Petani Banten? Okay, if your study is similar with or summary from the Prof. Sartono Kartodinjo's book, I think you didn't giving something new related to the historical knowledge. Okay, so what is different? You study with the Sartono Kartodinjo book, and then I think maybe not all follower of the resistance in Banten is peasant, petani. There's the santri, maybe, okay. There's the follower from the nobleman of the Banten Sultanate, para pengikut Tubagus, Jawara. I think not all of them are peasant, petani, no. So because of that, should be clear about your title. You will analyze the santri, you will analyze the follower of the Jawara, ulama, and so on and so forth, in confronting or against the Dutch colonial government. Okay, so should be also what is selecting about the terminology. I think if the pemberontakan, rebellion, it is to what is the great event, because this is between the Dutch colonial government official and the Tubagus followers, ulama followers. I think maybe the terminology who suitable for your people is resistance, perlawanan, or reaction, reaksi. Okay, not rebellion. If rebellion is like the what is army, okay, between one army and again other army with modern what is meant. But I think it is the traditional people against the modern bureaucracy structure. Maybe the resistance is suitable to be used in your people. Okay, and you didn't mention about the, as you know, that the Banten Sultanate was abolished by Daendels in 1812 or 1811 in early 19th century, because no corporate didn't collaborate with the Daendels. Because of the Daendels abolished the Sultanate Banten. Because of that, the noblemen of the Sultanate Banten want to re-establish the Sultanate in the time of Dutch colonial government. Because of that, the leaders of resistance is the Tubagus, Haji, Kiai, and so on and so forth. And most of them, ancestor with the Banten Sultanate. Okay, you should be analysis why this resistance want to establish about the Banten Sultanate, because Daendels abolished this Sultanate in early 19th century. Okay, and if you read about the Abelapian people article, there's the relationship between the Krakatau catastrophe in one hand and the Banten resistance in 1888. As we know that the Krakatau volcano in 1803, there's the eruption, these volcanoes. And according to Banten community, Banten society, the god was angry to the Banten community and also to the Dutch colonial government, because they are no implementing good in religion. So maybe it should be analysis the relationship between the eruption of Krakatau monsoon in one hand and the Banten resistance against the Dutch colonial government. And you also didn't mention about what kind of tarekat implemented by the Banten ordinary people, because there's many tarekat using by the what is resistant leader. For example, in Banten, there's the tarekat Qadariyah, Syartariyah, Rifaiyah, or Qadariyah wa Naqsabandiyah should be mentioned. If you read about the Sartono Kartodijo book, maybe the Rifaiyah or the Qadariyah tarekat, in which believe that if we implementing this tarekat, we what is the follower will to be the kebal, kebal tidak akan tembus peluru and so on and so forth, as showing in the debus performing art. Jadi para pengamal debus di Banten itu most of them is follower the tarekat Qadariyah or Rifaiyah. Okay, should be mentioned. It is about the belief. The followers of the tarekat in Banten. Okay. So including also the Just King movement, Gerakan Ratu Adil, okay, as the Sartono Kartodijo study about this phenomenon should be also analyzed. Gerakan Ratu Adil, the Just King movement is related also how the Banten people and leaders want to reestablish the Banten Sultanate. Okay, and the last reference also, okay, you should read about the Sartono Kartodijo's book, Lapian article, the relationship between the Krakatau eruption and the Banten resistance. And you should be read also about the Esin I, Ida, Sriklep, and Nina Herlina Lubis studied about the between Jawara and Ulama in Banten, including also the what is Banten resistance in 19th century should be used. Okay, and if you want to understand about the Banten Sultanate, please also read the Hussein Jayadiningrat book. Okay, tinjauan kritis tentang sejarah Banten. In order you understand why Haji Wasid, why other figure in this Banten resistance want to re-establish about the Banten Sultanate. It should be read about the history of Banten Sultanate based on study of the Hussein Jayadiningrat. Okay, and this book was translated to the bahasa Indonesia, tinjauan kritis tentang sejarah Banten. Okay, I think that's my comment. So, because you are a student of history, it should be logically and also comprehensively in analyzing about your topic, okay? In order you giving something new in knowledge, in insight related to the historical phenomenon on historical study. At least it should be referred to the standard book, okay? I think if you study about, if your article read to the Banten resistance against the Dutch colonial government, please read the Sartono Kartodijo book and others. In order your analysis is in accordance with the former standard study related to your topic. Okay. However, I think it is my suggestion, my recommendation. Please, you make ensure that in making the poor people, you should be use the many sources, standard sources, book or article in the journal, in order your analysis about your topic is comprehensively, logically, rationally, and proportionally. please ensure that your analysis not based on the literature perspective, and also please didn't use about the historical judgment. It should be analyzed proportionally, logically, scientifically. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. And let's ending our lecture today by reciting together also Hamdalah, Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Inshallah we will meet again in the next week with different topic. And I would like to make the brief comment in different language. I would like to make the using the language of Malay. Okay. Thank you very much. See you in the next week. Bye-bye. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Pak.
Okay.
Terima kasih banyak.
So we can live from the